Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today because last week my district experienced its second storm of the century in the last 3 years, its third since 2008. More than 7 inches of rain turned the streets of Hinsdale, Elmhurst, Franklin Park, and Albany Park into rivers. Clearly, we need to revisit our definition of the 100-year storm, because while some may doubt the reality of climate change, it is a fact that stronger, more destructive storms are pounding our region with distressing regularity and resulting in huge costs. While some don't believe in climate change, I hope they believe in funding flood control. We owe it to our constituents. I spent most of this past weekend touring my district touring flooded streets and basements throughout. Everywhere I went, I encountered residents who had lost their homes, their belongings, and their peace of mind. The residents I talked to wanted to know 2 things. What was their government going to do to help? And why was this happening again so soon after the horrific flooding of 2010? I told the people that my office would do everything it could to bring federal disaster relief to their homes and businesses, but unfortunately, federal help for big states can be an uphill fight. Aid is based in part on a population-based formula that penalizes large states like Illinois. Big states have to suffer more damage before meeting the aid threshold. This process of awarding aid is unfair, and we need to change it. I raised this concern this summer with my colleagues on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I was pleased to see language in Superstorm Sandy legislation requiring FEMA to review its processes in awarding disaster aid. But reviews and bill language are of little immediate consolation to people who have lost their homes or businesses. With 44 counties declared a disaster area after last week's flood, we don't need another study. The people of my district and others across the state need our help. FEMA needs to act, and act without delay, to get Illinois back on its feet. Every town in my district has projects that will help lessen the impact of the next storm. Storm sewer improvements, berms, swales, planting more wetlands, permeable pavers, detention ponds, and the deep tunnel project can lessen or even prevent disaster. We need to find the funds for these local projects that will avert the next flood and ultimately save millions in tax dollars and damages. For the Chicago area, that means demanding the $35 million per year in federal funding that is needed to complete the McCook and Thornton reservoirs. These reservoirs are part of a larger flood mitigation plan put in place over 20 years ago by the Army Corps of Engineers. The federal government is now holding up their completion because of budget issues. Local budgets are just a start, though. We also need to address the question of why 100-year storms are recurring so often. Climate change is here, and we must address it now. With a sensible energy policy, development of alternative energy sources, and common sense conservation, we can begin to confront one of the great challenges of our time. If we don't, then the storms of last week in the Midwest and last fall on the East Coast will be the new normal, and that's a normal none of us can afford. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr.